Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's we're going to be doing a three-way driving comparison with a Ram 1500 Laramie, a Ford F-150 Lariat, and a Chevy Silverado 1500 LTZ. First and foremost though, a huge shout out and thank you to the Larry Miller Ford Lincoln here in Provo, Dodge Ram here in Provo, and Chevy here in Provo for giving me some time with all three of the trucks. I'll include a link to all their inventories in the description down below so you can check them out. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. Let's talk about visibility in the Ram before we set off. Here's your visibility over the hood. Both the mirrors, which do have blind spot monitoring, and throughout the rest of the rear. And let's set off. So setting off here in the Ram 1500. And first off, what I want to mention is seat comfort's really good in the Ram. Ram has done an amazing job with building out these seats to where they look great, but then they're also extremely comfortable as well. Now, when it comes to the driving experience with the Ram, it's kind of interesting because it is kind of like an old school driving experience because you got a big naturally aspirated V8 with kind of like a newer school driving experience because that coil suspension definitely means that this is really smooth, and especially when you go over bumps. Like out of all three of these trucks, this one handles bumps by far the best because it doesn't have leaf springs, right? It has that multi-link setup in the rear. And so with that setup, you know, it's going to absorb the bumps a lot better because you have just a little bit more happening in the back end, even though it still utilizes a solid rear axle. Now, some other stuff here with the Ram 1500 is the cabin definitely feels kind of like slightly closed off in a sense because really like dark interior with this specific one, and the window seals right here come up pretty high. And so yeah, just kind of understand that. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, it's just the general feel that you get when you're inside this truck. Now let's get our acceleration here with the Ram 1500. Gear shifts super seamless, super quick, so that's great. Yeah, this 5.7 Hemi, it punches, and that 8-speed automatic is really good. I actually just drove a classic Ram yesterday, and this new transmission compared to what's in the Ram Classic is so much better. So overall thoughts here with the Ram, this feels like a nice upscale luxury truck and it has a driving experience to support that. But what I will say is this definitely doesn't feel sporty in any way when it comes to the driving experience. It still feels like a pickup truck. Like it's got the weight and everything that you normally associate with a pickup truck. And so I also just realized I went into the wrong place. But anyways, so if you're looking for a mix between, what a modern truck feels like in an old school truck, that's what the Ram 1500 currently provides, and you can still get a nice big V8 with it. Well, let's talk about visibility here in the Ford. Here's your visibility over the hood. Both the mirrors, which do have blind spot monitoring, and throughout the rest of the rear. And let's set off. So setting off in the Ford, and I can tell you right off the bat, the F-150 definitely has the most comfortable seats out of the batch. I don't think they look as cool as the seats in the Ram, but they definitely are the most comfortable to sit in. And the other thing I really like about the new F-150 is just the platform. So they've done a really good job with the tuning on the suspension, despite the fact that they still use leaf springs. But like, again, if you could take the F-150 platform and then just throw in Rams, basically multi-link suspension in the rear, like this truck would by far ride the best. But because it still utilizes leaf springs, it kind of keeps it from riding the best. Okay, now moving along again with the Ford, good torque out of the EcoBoost. Definitely the quietest truck out of the bunch, that's for sure. You see, when you're just going on smooth pavement, it's pretty good, but you do feel a little bit of, bouncing around in the back because of those leaf springs. But I mean, it's a really comfortable truck. Now, one thing to mention is the F-150 definitely has this like lightweight feel that the other true trucks don't quite have. And I'm sure the use of lots of aluminum definitely has a big part to play in that. So it kind of just gives this truck a, I don't know if I'd call it a sportier feel, but it feels more lightweight. It feels more maneuverable as well. Okay, so let's get our acceleration here with the F-150. Wow. Okay, so the Ram definitely felt a little bit more immediate, right? Because it's not turbocharged, it's naturally aspirated. But man, once you get into those turbos with this F-150, this thing moves. Definitely the quickest out of the bunch when it comes to acceleration. And so, something things up with the F-150, I feel like it's a nice middle ground. So it's, again, doesn't feel quite as luxurious with the ride compared to the Ram, but it's really, really close. When it comes to driving, again, it feels a little bit more lightweight, seat comfort's a little bit better. And so overall, this is really solid. It's crazy that, you know, these trucks are all so similar, but at the same time, they all have their benefits and downsides. Let's talk about visibility before we set off. Here's your visibility of the hood and the heads-up display. Both of the mirrors throughout the rest of the rear. And let's set off. So, setting off in the Silverado. And yeah, this definitely has the most truck feel to it. Like I said, this feels the most old school out of the bunch. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because there's a lot of vehicles that people really want to purchase because of that like older school feel. Like look at the Toyota 4Runner, for example. People just flock after that because of how it feels like an old school SUV. So the Silverado definitely provides that. That being said though, you know, it does have a lot of modern truck stuff with the driving. So steering's light, so you're not having to muscle it around, right? It has power steering, okay? And you know, this 5.3 V8's actually really good. Now this obviously isn't the premium powertrain for this. The 6.2 would be. Really hard to find 6.2 trucks though that aren't already pre-sold. So I guess it's a little bit easier to get access to like Ford's premium powertrain, the EcoBoost, the 3.5 EcoBoost, than it is, and then Ram's, than it is with Chevy's powertrain here, or premium powertrain here. Okay, so we're gonna get our acceleration here, and then I'll kind of finish things up with the seats. Woo! So again, this is going to be the slowest out of the bunch because it's the least powerful, but again, you can get the 6.2 V8. That would have been a better engine for this specific comparison. Now with the seats here, they're definitely harder than the other two, but the thing I've noticed about GM seats is if you just sit in them with good posture, then like it's comfortable. And like in the other, especially in the Ford seats, I find myself like sinking into them like a couch, and so sometimes my back hurts because I sit with such bad posture in the seat. So personal problem, right? But yeah, it's just kind of something to mention. So yeah, with this Chevy, like I said, definitely the most old school feeling out of the bunch, but I feel like this is the best value play out of the bunch because you get the most features for the least amount of money with this truck. And so I can understand why, you know, Silverados have become so popular in this market, because Ram's pricing is astronomical, Ford's pricing is astronomical, and you know, Chevys are expensive. It's you know, it's still an expensive pickup truck, but it's definitely a lot more reasonable compared to the other two. And so if you want kind of more of like a traditional truck driving experience, the Silverado provides that, whereas the other two, they definitely are starting to feel more car-like, where, like I said, whereas this, it's definitely still like you get into this and you're like, this is a pickup truck. To sum things up with this comparison, first off, when it comes to looks, those are going to be subjective. I do like the sporty package here on the Ram though, when it comes to the looks with the fender flares and the sport hood and all that, you know, just kind of fits my vibe. But when it comes to the actual interior with all of the trucks, I think the Ram definitely still has the most luxurious feeling. Interior of the Ford is definitely a close second, and then the Silverado, I would say, is pretty close to the Ford. The only thing that I would say is the Ford has slightly more comfortable seats compared to the Silverado. Now, when it comes to driving dynamics, the Silverado kind of provides the most like old school truck feel when it comes to the driving dynamics, whereas the F-150 kind of provides like the newest school feel when it comes to driving dynamics, whereas the Ram is kind of in between both of the trucks. If I could make like a perfect truck, it would have the platform of the F-150, the rear suspension of the Ram, and then it would have probably the 6.2 V8 from the Silverado. This one obviously has the 5.3, but you know, just making my hypothetical perfect truck. But you know, anyways, when you just put it all together, there are pros and cons to all of them, and so I feel like with this specific comparison, The Silverado is definitely the value play because you have the most amount of features for the least amount of money with this truck. The F-150 is kind of in the middle. The Ram is the most expensive and actually happens to have the least amount of features for how much money you're paying for the truck, which is definitely an interesting play by Stellantis because usually they're the least expensive, not the most expensive. So let me know which one you think is the best value and which one you would pick. It's definitely a hard choice, but that'll sum things up, and I'll see ya. Also, almost forgot, a huge shout out and thank you to the Lariat Miller, Ford Lincoln, Dodge Ram, and Chevy here in Provo for giving me some time with all three of the trucks. Check out all of their inventories in the description down below. I'll see ya.